We have many questions, so I'll start with some of the students' questions. What motivated you to fight against human rights violations and to promote freedom? This is for both of you. So,
thank you for the HRF and UFM for having me here in Guatemala, in a really nice country. For me, is not just a cause, it's personal. What I've shared is not only a story, but is something that's really happened in my lifetime. So I think it is for us, those who are oppressed, it comes naturally in our hearts that we have to defend what we believe. So I think this is the answer.
Great answer. How about for you, Faisal?
I would say it's a combination of personal, the cause itself, and the people that I get connected to because of the cause. For me, it's personal. I mean, just living, I remember seeing the first person being killed in front of my eyes by Al-Qaeda when I was a teenager. And at the beginning, you have the emotional feeling, like, okay, like you're just witnessed a murder. And then after a while, you get used to it, unfortunately. And me personally, psychologically, I think like my body was fighting that normalization, which is like, you should not normalize this. This is not normal. So I think that kind of personal gut feeling, I think you can say, is that this is wrong and you have to fight it back. So that's the first, I would say, the personal one. The cause is really, I mean, more after I start seeing what a freedom looks like, it's really worth defending. So that gave me the energy to continue. And then third, when I start doing activism, I get connected to a lot of amazing people, some of them on the stage here, who also in different places, in different countries, circumstances, they're doing the fight for freedom. So I think these three actions combined together created this crazy person you see in front of you.
I will go ahead with the most popular question so far. What could you say to someone who wants to fight back against this government, but is afraid the government might retaliate against their family?
It's difficult, and I mean, difficult to say the least. Like I remember, it's sad to say, but it's like in many occasions I actually had to lie to my mom about my activism, especially after the loss of my brother. I knew that like her first instinct would be, don't do this, stay home, do your homework. And in a way, I actually had to, in my first years of activism, I had to live double lives. And then feeling at the same time the guilt that if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, it's not just gonna affect me personally, my family would actually suffer the cost as well, who probably never had any, as I said, my family is apolitical, academics, professors, etc. So they had no really beef in the fight that I was involved in. So then after a while, as I grew up, now I lead a team of 120 people, that feeling never stops. I'm always I remember once I tweeted something against the Islamic Republic of Iran, and within 5 minutes, one of my team members get a call from the intelligence services saying, we know what Faisal did on Twitter, and so now the feeling moved away from kind of being the guilt for my family, but now being the guilt for my staff. But at least with my staff, I think one of the things is that many people have chosen that battle. So I think is that I'm feeling less guilt. But it's difficult, but that should not deter you, because that's exactly what the authoritarians want. Is that they want to create so much difficulty for you to speak out, and then eventually you live under their rule, which I hope many of you will not agree to that.
To be honest, these kind of things happens a lot in the Hong Kong community, especially after we have so many people flee the country because we separated from our family. Many of us are separated from our families, and after all of the oppressions, all of the laws that I mentioned and enacted, the government started to use hostage-taking tactics towards activist families, or perhaps just general a layman person's families. They often harass or invite him to have a coffee in the police office. So it happens a lot to our community that there's often disagreements between families and activists. And yeah, as Faisal said, I think it's a way that the regime wants to stop us from speaking up. And somehow, I would say, I have the guiltiness that what we are doing actually puts our families and relatives in danger. But then I would say you are not alone if you are in that case. And many of us are experiencing the same thing. And I think the most important thing is that we have to stand in solidarity and united together. So things will sort out eventually.
That's a great answers, by the way, and I love how you connect from isolation to connection with other people fighting other places. And so that leads to the second question that is most owning. How important is the role of social media in relation to informing other people in the world about what's happening in your region? And so I would just like to say this. It's impressive how sometimes we follow people that are not Guatemalans. And now we have people here that were born and raised in such distant lands. And here they are. And I encourage you to continue sending your questions or comments or getting involved in the workshops in the afternoon to interact with these wonderful people. So again, what is the role of social media? Thank you.
Well, indeed, it's really important, I would say. Like, Faisal could explain more. But I think people in Central America or in Latin America, they may not know about Hong Kong before the umbrella movement or before 2019. We geographically, we are really distant from each other. But then, thanks to the social media, we connect many people around the world. Let me share an example. There is a milk tea alliance. I'm not sure if you have heard about it across Asia and the Southeast Asia. Milk tea is a thing that connects people, dissidents and activists from Hong Kong, Taiwan, Thailand, Burma, and Vietnam, and many places in Asia, because we share one common interest. We all have our own style of milk tea. And during 2019 and around that period of time, we, the resistance forces, we figure out these sort of like common elements of our culture, and we connect each other through social media. And this is a time when we first known that there are so many people in Asia, in Southeast Asia, being oppressed by authoritarian regimes. And we try to amplify for each other in this so-called milk tea alliance, and to introduce our movements to other people, and being introduced by other cross-movement allies to their stories. And in this case, we success for like empowering each other. And also we have done one thing that's really important, is to show the dictators, to show the autocracies that we, the people who fight for freedom and democracy, we also connect with each other. So they sparkle the cross movements, actions, and amplified for each other after all.
Do you want to share your social media in case some people want to follow you, or no? It's okay if you don't.
My social media is Carmen Lau. It's easy.
Very hard.
Yeah, it's easy.
All right. Thank you. How about you?
I mean, I agree with everything. And I can add, I mean, to know the importance of social media, think about how much authoritarian regimes spend money on them. So if you grew up in the Middle East, most of the media is state-controlled. So it's owned mostly by 3 to 4 states that control most of the, and the only way out of the state-controlled media is social media. So in a way is that you might hear, you look up the national state-sponsored television, and you can hear a completely different story about what happened. To give you a personal story about state-controlled media. So I didn't know that Iraq invaded Kuwait until 2005. So the way that the war was sold to us by the regime was that America and Israel invaded Iraq, and we won that war. And the fact that we won that war is that Saddam Hussein is still in power, and Baghdad is under the control of the Ba'ath Party, and we actually defeated the Americans and the West and all of that stuff. And it was 2004 when the internet was just being free in Iraq. I saw there was this video, and I saw there was like Iraqi armies being defeated by the Americans and all that stuff. And I remember going to my parents. I was like, "What the hell is this even real? Like, what Kuwait? What invasion of Kuwait? All that stuff." And I remember, like, my family was like, "If we told you the truth, we would all be dead right now." So this is, and then they tell you like kind of the ecosystem of information. Recently, though, especially actually when COVID happened, and I think that's something maybe UFM could actually take advantage of in the work we did, is that when COVID happened, CCTV, or CGTN actually, the Chinese television, out of nowhere there was this amazingly viral video of a Chinese person speaking fluent Arabic. And it went viral just for that reason. And then the content of that video was that the CIA created coronavirus, and the aim is to kill all the Muslims and the Arabs and all of that stuff. And that's where we realized that now social media, and particularly YouTube and all these places, are also being places of misinformation, of state-run information. So I think it's very important. Then as a result of that, we have started doing workshops all across Iraq and the Middle East to do critical thinking workshop in which people can differentiate fact from fiction. Because nowadays, the internet and the social media space is contaminated with bullshit, excuse my French, or my Spanish, is like, it's filled with it. And I think people, especially people your age and students, need to really spend time navigating what's true and what's false and figure out which content is actually state-sponsored and which one is actually created by human rights defenders and others. So I think it's very important for you guys to be aware of that.
Thank you. It's very interesting and a lot of recommendations there. I would like to combine 2 questions. And if you may, and you can take a minute to think about it. The questions are, and let's start with the losses. What have you lost, and what have you learned or earned in this struggle for freedom? And so if you take a minute to think about it, because taking this decision was probably not taken lightly. It was a serious decision. And in it, you have lost, and at the same time, you have earned.
It is a tough question to answer.
It's a tough crowd.
I lost many of my friends, lost time with my families. I lost I couldn't be ever going back to Hong Kong, like at least in the short future. So I lost every bit of the good things in Hong Kong, but comparing to those who are in prison now, comparing to those who may serve their life in prison, I think there is there is nothing like for earn. I would say I earned a lot of friendships from my advocacy, and I also earned opportunities to speak out for Hong Kong. And This is a thing that I put it in my heart for all the time. That's if it's not the sacrifices from the political prisoners in Hong Kong, and if it's not the sacrifices for the protesters who directly face police brutalities and who lost their lives, I wouldn't earn these opportunities. And I remember, I would put it in my mind all the time, in my heart, that it doesn't come, it wasn't taken, I wouldn't take it for granted. And if it's not the movement, if it's not the journey that I've been, I wouldn't be here to speak to you all today.
Thank you. Very heartfelt answer.
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is that I lost sleep. The first thing that really affected me on a personal level is actually being always connected in the work in the Middle East and different time zones and all of the struggles of some of my team, is that on many occasions I get calls at 3, 4 in the morning. Well, I actually have to intervene to fix some situation or another. So that's on a personal level, like day-to-day basis, sleep has been a struggle. The other things, I mean, of course, as I said, I unfortunately, I started activism at a very young age. So really, I particularly started when I was 14 or 15. And now I'm 32. I guess I could reveal my age here. And so think about it, 17 years of that. I start learned it the hard way sometimes, of like when it is important to actually take a mental health break, or to know that just doing things compulsively might actually not be helpful to the teams that you are supposed to help and the constituents you're supposed to support. So recently, I've actually tried to learn this concept called self-care. So is that you actually have to take care of yourself before you take care of others, and try to help. So I think that there is a lot, and to kind of counter that, one of the things I guess you can call the personal philosophy is that when you start with like the small acts of activism, that gives you a lot of energy for you to continue. So I think that kind of, even now that I live in a free society, I still pursued, and I'm an American citizen, so actually I have a ability to open a 7-Eleven or a taco restaurant if I want. But I still continue to do this because I think it earned me a very big purpose, is that to be able to help others and to be able to be of service to others, I think it's a privilege to be in a place where you can help people, where you can actually elevate people to be in a place, and whether it's through supporting smaller grants to startups across the region and seeing like the eyes of these business owners of like how their lives changed and how many refugees they hired right now because of a couple $1,000 we give into to a business owner, like seeing it through the eyes, seeing that being in that place. So I think I earned a lot of really purpose and energy to really kind of, for me, it's like not important just to live, but also have a life worth living. And I think being in that space has allowed me to be in a place where, like when I hang out with a lot of my gringo American friends, and they're all talking about like, oh, I need a purpose. And I'm like, I have so much purpose in my life. Actually, I need less purpose. So I think it's like, that's definitely, and speaking of earning, I just earned an honorary doctorate from Whittier University in California. So
Congratulations.
So that's something I earned recently. So thank you.
So there's a lot of good questions. I congratulate all of those that are posing questions or comments. And if I don't get a chance to read your question, please make use of the workshop where you can pose some of these questions directly to our speakers, our wonderful speakers. So I'm going to select this. What is the best or most effective way to show one's disapproval of an authoritarian regime? Where does it all start? How does one show disapproval?
I think in our generation, I would say Hong Kongers has been oppressed since we were colonial of the British government. And after the hangover, we were ruled over by an authoritarian regime. And from generations to generations, we resist. And I think we are like born to be an activist to resist the authoritarian because the historical reason. And in our generation, everything started since 2012, if I remember. I was a high school student by then. The government wanted to enact a patriotic national education. It's all about patriotic or national security for the CCP. And this is the way they oppressed people's freedom. And I was a high school student. I was preparing for the public exam, which is really important for like growing up in a tiger parents family. And it is quite, and I'm not sure if you guys have heard about a Hong Konger named Joshua Wong. He was much younger than me by then, and he's also a secondary school student, and he initiated a student movement. And I think that that's where our generation's movement started, and it was the rest is history. It doesn't matter. What I want to say is, it doesn't matter with the age. It doesn't matter with when, how old you are right now to get engaged in any of the activism or to defend freedom and democracy. It can be started by a really small things, like I don't want patriotic education in my high school, so we started a student movement, and it matters. I think the more matters is how what your beliefs are, and how much you are determined to advocate for that.
Should I?
Please.
I might give a bit an unusual answer, but comedy. The most things that authoritarians are afraid about are jokes. And I remember growing up, some of the first people who get targeted were the comedians and the people who were making fun of the regime. And that's something they cannot control. So, because the great thing about kind of political satire in particular is that it dismantles all of the seriousness of these dictatorships, because many of them take themselves so seriously. They think they're the saviors of the, Saddam Hussein was a good friend of Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro and all that. And he was like, Viva la Revolución, and like, we are the revolution and the leaders. But when you make a joke about him, he freaks out. So he's like that savior, but you make one joke about him and he starts, like, he kills you and your family, which tells you everything about how insecure many of these people are. So I think maybe the first act would be making sure that comedy doesn't die and sharing a joke on the internet. And making sure that these, and especially for those of us who are outside where the authoritarians live, you can actually utilize your voice to continue the jokes not dying. So in that way, the regime will keep remembering that other people are laughing about them.
So rebellion through memes.
Exactly. And
Well,
I love memes.
Yes, there's some great memes out there that make us laugh and make us think, right? And that is a great idea. So knowing that we are running out of time, I would like to encourage you to make this last intervention about how to best promote the ideas of respect for individual rights, rule of law, free markets. How does that tie in with your own struggles? Is that something you seek or not? What is the best way to go about promoting these ideals?
Well, definitely that's literally what I do at an organization, Ideas Beyond Borders, is that making sure there's two things to discuss. One is the availability of contents, which is like, yes, you can find Road to Serfdom in Arabic, or you can find Hayek and Mises and all of that stuff. But the question is like how to actually make them digestible to the general public. And we have actually done a lot of work to what I think something called A/B testing, in which like we send 5-6 different messages, and we see through social media, again, the power of social media, you can actually see what sticks. So you can A/B test message that like, oh, the whatever you want to talk about of kind of classical liberal thoughts, or free speech. Like we did this video on John Stuart Mill on liberty, and we took like a very specific section about respecting minority opinion and what is a free speech. And free speech is about unpopular opinions, not the opinions that everybody agrees on. And we did kind of 5-6 videos on that, and we saw that some ones about like religious minorities sticked more than the ones that were kind of general or theoretical. So I think we those of us who are like take classical liberalism very seriously, is that we have to make sure that our ideas stick and they're digestible. And I find sometimes an issue is that in many cases we're talking to each other. Like when you go to many of kind of libertarian conferences and they're debating anarchism versus Hayek said in this. I was like, nobody cares really, other than like a bunch of dudes talking to each other in a conference in Georgia. Nobody outside that can digest it. And I think we can do a much better job. And seeing like the success story now, like 8.6 million, and like unusual, like you see like Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker is now one of our most downloaded books in Arabic. And the second one was John Stuart Mill. And to add to that, John Stuart Mill book was being used in the Iraqi protests in 2019. And there were people actually printing on liberty and spreading it around to other protesters to show how important it is that the values we care about. So you would be surprised about if you make these ideas easy to digest, how many people would actually be part of them.
Thank you. Carmen?
I will have a short answer. I would say to practice it in your daily life, to inspire people not just by words, but walk the talk. If you are believe in freedom, democracy, and human rights, then you practice your rights, you practice your freedom, and inspire and use your actions to tell people around you that's what your beliefs are, and to uphold your identity, to promote your own culture, which I think everyone should cherish their own identity and culture as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Since it's your first time in Guatemala, I'd like to officially welcome you to this beautiful country full of hardworking and nice people. And we are honored to host you. Thank you for sharing your stories. It has been inspiring to listen to you. With this, I thank you also, all of you, for providing great comments and questions. As you see, time flies. I could not get into all of the questions, although I tried to do the first one out that were in the app. So I appreciate this section, and I thank you as audience for being so engaged. And with this, we finish this section of questions and answers. Thank you very much.